My people, it's about that time.
Like a boss.
Live from the USA, helping you get paid every day. This is the boss of Bitcoin, the Cristo of crypto. It's your boy BK. And if you don't like me, you must not like money. Thank you for joining me, everybody. Today we're going to be doing a live update for Wall Street versus Bitcoin. As you know, this is quite literally the granddaddy of them all, Mr. Warren Buffett himself, and all of his billionaire buddies, that make up the New York Stock Exchange have, a strategy to, continue to make money in this world, right? I told you the other day that the entire credit card industry is like $130 trillion. Bitcoin only accounts for $2 trillion, and that's the entire blockchain. Bitcoin might be like 1.2 trillion. You got another 800 billion scattered throughout the cryptoverse. It's right around $2 trillion. So less than, 2% roughly of the entire GDP is dedicated to blockchain technology. And so, when you look at investing in an ROI, Wall Street has done a lot to remain relevant, and that's what we're going to be talking about in today's video. So if this is your first time tuning in, congratulations, baby. You are now rocking with the best. My name is BK, also known as the Crypto Trader, and I'm the boss of these charts, as you will soon find out. Every day I grace this microphone with my voice is another day. You get to profit as a result, and today is no exception. So real quick, we are giving away free Bitcoin every single Friday. You got two chances to win. The first is to text JOIN to 202-988-1079. The other is to leave a comment on any video. Every new video is a new chance to win. Again, text JOIN to 202-988-1079. Now let's go ahead and make this money. This is the Dow Jones Industrial Index chart. This is going all the way back to 1992. This is a 3-day chart to where if we were looking at candles, each one of these candles right here represents 3 trading days of Wall Street. And when you zoom out far enough, you can kind of standardize the candles into that simple moving average right there. And you start to see the different levels of economic performance that Wall Street had over time, right? Keep in mind, if you want to look at kind of like these down areas just to get some scope of, economic impact, that right there, this is the dot-com bubble. Right, I was still in, middle school, didn't know too much about .com and bubbles, but it happened, right? And a lot of people lost a lot of money and a lot of jobs during that time, right? This right here, much more steeper descent. This was the Great Recession, right? And that's 08. I was in the mix on that one. I was just graduated college, June of 2008. Probably one of the worst times to look at going and entering the job force. And here I am today as a result. It's crazy how the universe sends you on your path, but I definitely graduated at the worst time to go into entry-level engineering. And as a result, I'm no longer an entry-level engineer. Great Recession happened, and we had some capitulation, I think, when Donald Trump took over. I won't really call that out. This right here is a catastrophic event insofar as financial markets are concerned. This was the COVID bubble, right? And it didn't last very long. It only lasted about a month or so. But at a time, it looked like we were about to go into a depression, right? But they printed up a lot of money. COVID bubble could almost be looked at as like a flash crash because it happened so quick and recovered so quick. Like you really don't have any, ongoing feeling of that moment. Like the market's made tons of money since that incident. Stock market has made tons of money since that incident, and it kind of just happened and disappeared. So it's almost like a flash crash, right? And here we are up top, right? All the way north of $39,000 per IOTA unit DJIA. And, a lot of people are wondering what's happening next. When you really look at what has proliferated this chart, it's few things, right? What people don't realize is this is when Bitcoin was born, right? Bitcoin, the white paper, and the founder, Satoshi Nakamoto, kind of the greatest minds to bless humanity in recent history, one of the greatest, saw what was happening around the world and wanted to create a vehicle to empower its users and bypass a central authority. Like if you actually go and look at the Bitcoin white paper, this thing is literally, 9 or 10 pages, and it changed the entire world forever, right? 9 pages. This thing was published to the internet, I believe, in September. I want to say like September of 2008. And you can see it's literally like a term paper. Like somebody was handed it into their economics professor, right? 15 years in 2003. Yeah, 2008, right? Because, the user Satoshi Nakamoto saw what was happening, right? So Bitcoin came out in 2008. It really didn't gain, and you can mark that on the chart if you want to. Like, this is basically when Bitcoin launched, like right around there. It really didn't get any notoriety, however, until right around 2015. I think that's when Bitcoin launched on Coinbase. And I remember going on Coinbase, like you could buy Bitcoin, 400, 500 bucks. You know what I'm saying? You get you a couple $50 CVS cards, gift cards, and just stack them up. Like Coinbase wasn't asking for no ID back then, and it was very, very easy to accumulate a lot of Bitcoin pretty fast, right? They don't say like when the day that they launched, but I remember this was in like I didn't get in until like 2016, 2017. And Bitcoin was only accessible through Coinbase. They had another website called Local Bitcoins where you could actually meet up and buy off another human being in person, i.e. peer-to-peer. But, the powers that be shut that down because they want everything to run through the portals, the technology gates that have been opened to allow such said access, right? One of those is Apple. And we're going to get to Apple in a minute. In fact, half of this video is dedicated to them. So let's continue to move forward. As I stated, Bitcoin, when you look at this chart, you really have to start to understand like the game theory. Bitcoin at this point had already made like 1,000%. Between 2008 and 15, Bitcoin had already gone up, 1,000% depending on when you would have got in. Like it went from, I remember, $200 to like $1,000, and that's 5x. It's crazy, to be able to do that in that shortened period of time. And so you started to have some Wall Street speculators that are looking at Dow Jones like, this isn't making me enough money. I could start to put this in Bitcoin and in cryptocurrency. You got a new thing called Ethereum coming out that has an ICO, and these people are getting rich on ICOs. So then you have regulation that comes in, but all the while, the government still needed to continue to print more money to allow these companies to proliferate this economic growth, right? It's not really economic growth. It's more or less financial manipulation, and that's what we're about to get into. The biggest contributor, I think, actually it's two of them, now that it popped in my mind. Leveraged buyouts, number one. I remember seeing a chart, and it talked about the more leveraged buyouts you have, ultimately, the closer you are to an impending economic crisis. Basically, when every company is buying up every other company for hundreds of billions of dollars that they don't even have, that the banks have, but they work it out through the liquidity and the debt ratio. It's essentially showing you that you are at the end of any given economic cycle. And we've had tons of them. Another thing that has proliferated this, Dow Jones rally, I'm sure they'll call it, the longest ever, by the way, S&P buybacks, right? Stock buybacks. This is the S&P 500 and the hundreds of billions of dollars they use and spend annually just to buy back their own stock, right? It's a very simple premise of supply and demand by these companies, essentially borrowing money to buy back their own stock. They are artificially increasing the price because they are superficially decreasing the supply, right? And so a lot of this growth really isn't from more customers, going out and buying more products because they're better. A lot of it is artificial in the sense that it's fake money, creating artificial interest through these leveraged buyouts and buybacks, right? Prime example, after COVID, these companies spent even more money, which is crazy. You had one of the biggest flash crashes in humanity, wipe out 30% of everything in a year, and then it just didn't even matter. Just click the buy button. You know what I'm saying? Government clicked the print button. Businesses clicked the buy button, right? And so it was a pretty good time, to actually, be in the stock market, because this time Bitcoin wasn't doing too great, I believe, at the time, and Wall Street was hand over fist making money. Like Warren Buffett and his boys was getting off on this free COVID money they gave out, right? So, what they do, they bought back the stock goes higher. What happens as a result? Now we have companies that are valued in the trillions of dollars. I remember when this became 1 trillion, about 10 years ago. And I got the Wall Street Journal that day just to mark the moment. I was like, no company has ever been worth $1 trillion. Now $1 trillion ain't nothing. You know what I'm saying? It's gonna be who's the first one to be worth $10 trillion. But again, all that talks to the value of money being artificially suppressed and reduced due to inflation, and the valuation of these companies being artificially stimulated due to buyouts and buybacks. And Apple is a prime example of how to manipulate the system and be rewarded at the same time, right? I talked a lot about supply and demand. This is actually an economic, example. One of the things we talked about at Notre Dame was these aggregate shocks to supply and, what happens on this double line chart. So it might be kind of confusing at first, so I'm going to walk you through it. I think it has relevance for what we're talking about. It talks about, in the illustration above, the equilibrium price of an iPhone is $600. And so that's that bottom box, $600 EO, 1 million customers. So Apple had a market of 1 million customers that were willing to pay $600. What they say after that I found most interesting. They said, however, when the price of a Samsung Note increases, demand for iPhone will increase as well because they are close substitutes. And Samsung users switch Notes for iPhone. So when one phone comes out, even if it's from another company, if that phone is similar in market, they raise the price of the alternative so that their existing customers are willing to pay more. That's crazy to me, but that's common practice. And that's what you see Apple doing more and more often. Like, I can't even buy one of those smartphones, but that's why AT&T say, don't worry about it. You just pay $27 a month for the next 3 years. You know what I'm saying? And we got recurring revenue at full price. It's like $1,100, $1,200 for one of these phones with 18 cameras on it, recording your face when you don't even know what's happening. Right? It's crazy. I had to get out of that. And I remember like thinking a long time ago, I was like, it's basically like a pyramid of brand esteem. Because I used to be all Apple everything, like back in the day. Back when I was a slave, I was one of Apple's best customers, right? And it was like, I thought about it and I said, the reason the bridge exists, because it's like this hierarchy. You have to work to get somebody to be like as loyal as an Apple customer as I was. But once I decided to switch to Google, to Android, which really ain't no better, it's like you become that much empowered over there, right? But I saw firsthand, it was like these phones kept getting more and more and more expensive, and they weren't necessarily getting any better. Like the camera, between the iPhone 8 and the iPhone 10, that was a big jump. They did a lot with like that autofocus and, the portrait mode. I think that kind of revolutionized the camera industry. But other than that, it's not really too much. Now they just got 18 cameras, so now we could 3D map your face, give you a what is it called? Retina scan and, all that good stuff is already built into the metrics. But I say all that to say that the quality has not improved, but the price has been justified through, quote, competitive metrics. But in the end of the day, all they're doing is making more money for, their friends on Wall Street. Like, that's the strategy. Now, it's not to produce value, capture value, and deliver that value over the course of a customer's lifetime. It's how much money can we make this quarter? You know what I'm saying? Let's beat the market. And it's this thing called planned obsolescence that is basically the intentional destruction of one product to birth another product, right? And this happened time and time and time again. And what it does is in technology, you kind of have this bell curve, this S-life of technological utilization. But by removing one phone and introducing another, they artificially continue to string customers along for versions and versions and versions and versions and versions and versions of phones. In addition to that, I've noticed this, and this is another reason why I'll never buy another iPhone. Whenever I do not upgrade my firmware, or whenever a new phone, my phone was like 2 models old, like it basically stopped working. Like the calls would drop, it would start running slow, it would just shut off at any given time, and I'm like, man, this sucks. I might as well buy a new phone. This phone sucks. But it happened 2 or 3 times, and it just happened this last time. They wanted me to upgrade and update. It was like an old phone. I had like iPhone XR, right? And but it was painful. I went through my 36 months of slavery and I owned it, so I wasn't go buy another one. But it was like, you can't even use this thing. It's like a brick. So that's exactly what you want. You got $1,000 brick that you paid revenue for 3 years, and now they get you locked into the new version. So it's pretty manipulative, I think, is the easiest word to describe it. Metrics and mechanics that have artificially stimulated this economy for the better part of 15 years. But, the chicken will soon come home to roost. And as this is the longest bull run in the history of the free world. Like, that's crazy right there. We haven't had a correction or a recession since 2008. It's 2024. That's 16 years. On average, you're supposed to have one every 7 to 11 years, that hasn't happened. So I think the next one will be twice as bad. Unfortunately, there is no safe haven in a global reset. And right now, you can kind of just see that, the pot's running real hot right here. If this was a chart, and I give you charts on my channel all the time, I would not be keen to buy into this trend. I tell you, there's 3 parts to any cycle. Break out, break down, flatline. I'd be looking to buy after that flatline. We haven't seen the breakdown and we haven't seen the flatline. The last flatline that I really got interested in buying some stuff, and I wasn't even, able to buy anything at the time, was right around here. Right around here is when I really started to learn what is money, how to make money, how to trade. I learned options. That's when I got in the market. I remember I longed Tesla when it went public. It was fake money, but it would have made me rich if I had real money. So I was like, oh, this is easy. You just, pick the big companies and put your money on them. But that's where I started to learn metrics for, the trading and fast stochastic, MACD, Bollinger Bands. Like, I was in on all that. But I've simplified it much, much more. And that's what I talk about on this channel. So if you'd like to learn more about the metrics that I use, make sure you subscribe. I am making much, much more content. This was one of the top channels, y'all, in 2017, doing like 10,000 views per live stream. It was crazy, helping people all over the world change their life. And so that's what I'm gonna build this back up to, step by step, brick by brick, day by day. You know what I'm saying? We go make this money and keep it on wheels and keep on rolling. So thank you very much for joining me for this video. Hopefully you found value in it. If you did, hit that thumbs up button. Copy and paste the URL, text somebody you care about. Let them know this is valuable content. And also, do not forget, we're giving away free Bitcoin. 2 ways to win. First way, leave me a comment. Every video has a chance to win. Second way, text JOIN, JOIN, to 202-988-1079. So with that being said, everybody, it's that time of the day. Signing out. Boss. Boy BK, no matter where you stay, Brazil to Bay, California, all the way back out through Germany. Good night, good morning, and good day. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for your time. Hit that thumbs up button for a player. One time. Do that for me if you appreciate mine. Till we meet again, stay cryptic, y'all. Peace.
Like a boss.
Huh?